Hi, Peter Jones, Chartered Surveyor, author and property investor, and in this short series of videos we're thinking about where to find our property deals. And in this video we're thinking about where to find our rent-to-rent deals. Now, a couple of things before we start. Just for the purposes of being completely transparent, this is not a strategy which I undertake myself, but I know many people who do and who undertake it very successfully. So, although I've not done it myself, I've listened a lot to people who have, and so hopefully I can pass on some of their experience and knowledge. The other thing which I want to say is that there's a big misconception and misunderstanding as to what rent-to-rent actually is. The best way of describing rent-to-rent is that it's subletting. Now, I don't mean illegal subletting. That's the kind of subletting where, for example, you might rent a council property and then sublet it out. This is subletting in its purest form, and it's perfectly ethical and legal as long as the landlord or the owner who you're renting off knows exactly what you're doing. So essentially what you would do is you find a property, you would negotiate terms with the owner to rent the property off them, and then you in turn will agree terms with a tenant or with tenants to rent the property off you. Why would anybody want to rent you the property so that you can then rent it on in turn? Well, it all depends on the terms. If, for example, you come across maybe somebody who's an existing landlord, maybe they're fed up of being a landlord, maybe you can take the hassle of the property off them and yet still offer them an attractive guaranteed income. Maybe in return for a guaranteed income, maybe over a 3-year period or a 5-year period, whatever you agree with them, you will agree a rent which is lower than the open market rent. They'd be prepared perhaps to agree a rent which is lower than the open market rent because you're giving them security, you're giving them guaranteed rent. They know exactly what's going to happen, and maybe during the actual period of the lease itself you'll take on all responsibility for repairs and insurance, which otherwise they'd have to take on. It all comes down to the terms. There's reasons why people will want to rent the property to you. There's different ways that you can do a rent-to-rent. You can do it as a single let. I know of people who just rent a property and then they let it out to a single tenant on a short hold tenancy in the normal way. That can work fine. I know of other investors who will find a property which is either configured as a HMO, a house in multiple occupation, or they'll take the property on and with the owner's consent they'll make it into a HMO. If you're going to undertake works which are extensive in order to make it into a HMO, then obviously you're probably going to want a longer lease to make it more worthwhile and more viable. So where are we actually going to find our deals? Well, first of all, most of our deals are going to look exactly like our standard vanilla buy-to-lets or like a HMO, but we're probably not going to find these in the estate agent. Where are we going to find them? Well, typically we're going to be finding maybe motivated or distressed owners of properties. So that could be people who, for example, maybe they're moving, maybe they need to relocate for their work, maybe they have some kind of financial difficulties and they need to get out of their property. Whatever reason, they want to be able to rent their property onto you. Maybe they're not in a position to sell, maybe it's a property which they've taken on, they've bought, they have a mortgage, but it's in negative equity and they can't sell it. That could be a reason why they'd want to then rent the property to you on a long-term basis. Or typically, and stereotypically maybe, it could be somebody who's already a landlord, who's fed up of being a landlord. Or maybe they're not fed up of being a landlord, but perhaps they're getting a bit older and they want to retire, but they don't want to sell their assets. And they would appreciate the idea of a secure, regular income. Where we're probably not going to find our deals, though, is with landlords who are selling up because of Section 24. Why? Because the clue's in the statement. They're selling up. They're selling up because they need to get rid of their tax liability, and it's probable that if they have a mortgage on the property, renting the property to you long term doesn't get them out of the predicament that they'll have in not being able to offset their mortgage interest against the rent when they're calculating tax. So it's probably not going to be a distressed landlord who's selling up because of Section 24, but it could be a tired landlord, or it could just be a landlord who wants to retire, or it could be somebody who wants to be in property but they just want to be fairly hands-free and passive, and so they're quite happy to have you as an intermediary so that they don't have to deal with tenants and they don't have to deal with all the management issues and all the hassle. So where are we actually going to find the deals? Well, if I was going to go out and look for rent-to-rent deals, there's two places I'd start. The first would be letting agents. Now, I know that there's many people out there talking to letting agents with mixed success. Some letting agents get it, some letting agents don't get it at all. So you need to be able to explain to the agent simply and clearly what it is you're trying to achieve. That's going to give you the best chance of results. The other place where I'd go would be to landlord meetings. Not investor meetings. I think you'll find a different type of a property owner at an investor meeting, but I'd definitely go to a landlord meeting. Where would I find out about landlord meetings? Well, I'd probably go onto the internet, Google National Landlords Association, Residential Landlords Association, and landlords meetings. Google those and you'll get a list of landlords meetings in an area close to you. By the way, if you want to find out how I started my portfolio, and if you'd like to do the same, if you'd like to copy my plan as it were, then just go over to my website www.propertyteacher.co.uk, click on Learning with Peter, and you can invest in yourself by purchasing a copy of my ebook, The Successful Property Investor's Strategy Workshop, which basically takes you through the process that I used, starting with none of my own money to buying £2 million worth of properties over a 4-year period, really not knowing what I was doing, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. So I will show you everything I did right, I'll show you everything that I did wrong so that you can avoid all the mistakes I made, and you can copy my plan. And by the way, do you have to stop at 2 million? Well, of course not, and I didn't stop there. I've carried on expanding the portfolio since as well. So head over to my website, you'll find that a great resource and it'll be very helpful. Until next time, here's to successful property investing.